Johnny Carson utterly hated these guests. Number 4 is worse than you think. Johnny Carson, the smoothest talk show host, sometimes dreaded his own guests. From comedians who hijacked interviews to singers who physically confronted him, not every night ended in laughs. Behind Carson's calm smile lurked irritation, betrayal, and even fear. These shocking clashes reveal a very different Tonight Show. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the rare moments Johnny Carson hated. You'll discover which comedy legend turned every appearance into a scripted nightmare, which singer's fury pushed Carson to the edge, and which beloved children's star left him uncomfortably tongue-tied. We'll trace how friendships collapsed into betrayals, how powerful stars disrupted The Tonight Show, and how Carson's calm exterior sometimes had deep resentment. And yes, we'll reveal the shocking encounters that nearly ended in violence, humiliation, or permanent exile from late night's biggest stage. Stay tuned, because the most unexpected feuds are the ones you'll never forget. Number 1. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Few guests tested Johnny Carson's patience like Zsa Zsa Gabor. Known for her glamour, wit, and endless stories about wealth and romance, she dominated the conversations. For Carson, who thrived on steering interviews with sharp timing, Zsa Zsa Gabor's self-centered style was maddening. She talked over questions, veered off topic, and often left no space for Carson's humor. Worse, her diva-like behavior, flirting excessively with male hosts, boasting about luxury, and refusing to laugh at herself, clashed with Carson's demand for authenticity. To audiences, her antics were entertaining, but to Carson, it disrupted the Tonight Show's rhythm. He preferred guests who bantered naturally, but with Gabor, every exchange felt like battling for airtime. The imbalance frustrated him and created awkward tension. Conversation thrives on give and take. When one voice dominates, charm turns into chaos. Number 2. Bette Midler. Bette Midler created one of the most emotional Tonight Show moments, singing Carson into retirement. But off-camera, their chemistry was complicated. Midler's life-larger-than-life personality sometimes clashed with Carson's reserved, understated style. She was bold, outspoken, and unafraid to dominate the stage, while Carson preferred balance and subtlety. Off-set, Midler admitted Carson could be cold, even distant, leaving her uncertain of his true feelings. Some suspected her fiery confidence unsettled him. Others thought he resented how her powerful performances often stole the spotlight. During her 1992 farewell appearance, Midler sang directly to Carson, reducing him to tears and cementing TV history. But it also highlighted their imbalance. Midler's emotional presence overshadowed the host. Carson admired her talent, but never seemed fully comfortable in her orbit. Their relationship was respect mixed with friction, two forces that never quite aligned. Strong personalities don't always blend. Sometimes respect and tension exist side by side. Number 3. George Carlin. When Johnny Carson booked George Carlin, sparks didn't always fly. In fact, sometimes they fizzled. Early in his career, Carlin fit Carson's format, delivering tight, witty sets. But as Carlin reinvented himself into a countercultural icon, his act shifted toward politics, religion, and societal hypocrisies. Carson, who valued mainstream appeal and careful control, grew wary. Carlin's unpredictable edge clashed with Carson's polished style. Carson wanted fun, Carlin wanted revolution. The disconnect left interviews strained and uneven. Carson quietly distanced himself, inviting Carlin less frequently as his comedy grew sharper and more rebellious. For Carson, The Tonight Show was about keeping America entertained before bed, not sparking debates about church or state. Still, Carlin's genius couldn't be denied. He reshaped stand-up and influenced generations. But for Carson, that brilliance simply didn't fit his late-night blueprint. Not every stage suits every voice. Carson chose control. Carlin chose chaos. Both left a legacy. Number 4. Wayne Newton. Johnny Carson was famous for playful jokes, but Wayne Newton wasn't laughing. Known as Mr. Las Vegas, Newton became a recurring punchline for Carson. His polished looks, high-pitched voice, and flamboyant stage style. While many stars rushed off Carson's humor, Newton took it as an insult to his masculinity and artistry. The feud escalated when Newton stormed into Carson's office, physically confronting him and warning the jokes had to stop. Carson, usually calm and in control, was visibly shaken. He thrived on wit, not intimidation. After that incident, Carson toned down the humor but could never erase the unease. On stage, they maintained professionalism, yet underneath was raw hostility. Their interactions carried tension the audience never fully grasped. Newton had crossed a line most entertainers never dared. Humor loses its magic when it cuts too deep. Carson learned that even a laugh can spark real danger.
Number 5. Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte was a brilliant entertainer and passionate activist, but not the easiest Tonight Show guest. Belafonte rarely stuck to light banter. Instead, he steered conversations towards civil rights, racial injustice, and global struggles. These topics mattered deeply, but late-night audiences tuned in for laughter, not heavy debate. Carson, skilled at keeping interviews playful, found it difficult to weave humor into Belafonte's intensity. Their exchanges sometimes turned solemn, creating a tonal clash. Carson respected Belafonte's artistry and admired his activism, yet he struggled to keep the show's mood aligned with its purpose: entertainment. Behind the scenes, producers worried about the shift too. Belafonte, however, never compromised. His presence commanded seriousness. For Carson, it meant walking a tightrope between respecting Belafonte's mission and keeping viewers engaged. If you're enjoying this dive into Carson's most unforgettable clashes, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories. Your support keeps these hidden chapters alive. And don't forget, stick around because the second half holds some of Carson's most shocking confrontations yet. You won't want to miss it. Number 6. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase was comedy's golden boy in the mid-70s, but Carson wasn't impressed. From the start, Chase carried a reputation for arrogance. On Saturday Night Live, his deadpan delivery made him a star. Yet on Carson's stage, it came off as smug. Unlike comedians who played along with Carson's rhythm, Chase often projected superiority, as if he were auditioning for Carson's throne. Rumors swirled that Chase dreamed of becoming late night's next king, and Carson sensed it. Their exchanges lacked warmth, often turning stiff or awkward. Chase's sarcastic humor clashed with Carson's smoother charm, leaving interviews lopsided and uncomfortable. While audiences saw a comedy clash, Carson likely saw a rival, one unwilling to respect his format. Chase's presence disrupted the balance Carson thought to preserve. Talent alone doesn't win stages. Respect for the platform matters just as much. Number 7. Norman Mailer. Norman Mailer thrived on confrontation, which made him one of Johnny Carson's most exhausting guests. A brilliant but combative writer, Mailer turned interviews into sparring matches. Instead of playful banter, he'd challenge Carson, launch into intellectual debates, or dominate the stage with long-winded answers. Carson, who built his show on charm and humor, found this abrasive. Late-night audiences wanted laughs. Mailer often delivered heated arguments or polarizing opinions. His reputation as a provocateur preceded him, and Carson knew hosting him meant navigating potential landmines. While Carson stayed professional, it was clear he didn't enjoy the tension. The mismatch in Mailer's ego versus Carson's laid-back style created interviews that felt like endurance tests. Not every stage suited a debate. Sometimes relentless intensity drains the joy from conversation. Number 8. Bob Hope. Despite being two comedy icons, Johnny Carson dreaded Hope's visits. By the 1970s, Hope leaned heavily on scripted material, bringing cue cards and pre-planned jokes. Instead of free-flowing conversation, Carson was forced into rigid setups, acting like Hope's prop. What should have been witty exchanges turned into stiff routines. Hope rarely strayed from the script, leaving Carson frustrated. He once said interviewing Hope was like talking to a giant promotional machine. Since Hope often used appearances to plug specials or movies, unlike spontaneous guests who energized Carson, Hope's formula drained the magic from the room. Their segments felt forced, awkward even to watch. Audiences crave authenticity. Scripted charm can't replace genuine connection.
Number 9. Mr. Rogers. Fred Rogers, beloved for his sincerity, brought a different kind of challenge. Carson thrived on teasing, sarcasm, and playful banter, but Rogers' gentle, earnest demeanor left little room for comedy. Every time he appeared, the pace slowed. Rogers spoke softly about kindness and childhood education, topics that clashed with late-night escapism. Carson respected Rogers deeply, but struggled to engage him in The Tonight Show's fast, lighthearted rhythm. Making jokes at Rogers' expense risked looking cruel. Yet without humor, the conversation felt flat. The contrast between their personas created an awkward dead zone, making interviews stilted. Rogers was adored, but on Carson's stage, their chemistry never clicked. Even great people don't always fit every stage. Styles must align for true magic. Number 10, Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis was a Hollywood legend, but to Johnny Carson, he was a handful. Curtis loved the spotlight, and once seated on the Tonight Show couch, he rarely gave it back. Instead of concise answers or playful banter, he launched into sprawling stories about his career, his romances, or glamorous Hollywood escapades. While entertaining at times, his long-winded monologues left little room for Carson to steer the show. Worse, Curtis often tried to upstage Carson with theatrical antics or humor that didn't quite land. His energy clashed with Carson's subtle, controlled hosting style, leaving interviews chaotic. To Carson, Curtis's brashness wasn't just distracting, it broke the Tonight Show rhythm he worked so hard to perfect. Guests were meant to complement the host, not wrestle the spotlight away. Curtis, though charming, never seemed to understand that balance. Charisma without restraint can overwhelm. True presence is knowing when to share the stage. Number 11, Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters wasn't afraid to shake things up literally. During one infamous Tonight Show, she removed her shoe mid-interview and handed it to Carson, leaving him visibly irritated. That was typical Winters, unpredictable, brash, and unafraid to dominate conversations. She interrupted questions, veered off topic, and challenged Carson's control of the show. While some viewers enjoyed her larger-than-life personality, Carson clearly found her exhausting. He valued smooth pacing and balance, but Winters thrived on disruption. Their exchanges often felt combative instead of playful, forcing Carson to work harder just to keep things on track. Off-beat stunts might have amused audiences, but for Carson, they disrupted professionalism. Winters' unfiltered boldness simply didn't match with his Midwestern reserve and carefully tuned timing. Boldness entertains, but without boundaries, it can turn playful chaos into real friction. Number 14, Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers started as Johnny Carson's protege, becoming one of his sharpest and most frequent guests. Carson admired her razor wit and often let her guest host the show, fueling speculation she'd inherit his chair one day. But their partnership collapsed spectacularly in 1986. When Rivers accepted a Fox deal to host her own late-night show, she failed to tell Carson beforehand. He saw it not just as competition, but betrayal. When she called to explain, he refused to take the call and banned her permanently. The rift lasted nearly 30 years, with Jay Leno upholding the ban in Carson's honor. Only when Jimmy Fallon took over in 2014 did Rivers finally return. For Carson, it wasn't about rivalry. It was about broken trust. The wound never healed. Success without loyalty costs dearly. Trust lost is rarely regained.
13. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra brought star power wherever he went, but to Johnny Carson, he also brought headaches. Sinatra was larger than life, and he knew it. On one infamous night, he strutted onto Carson's stage mid-monologue, cutting the host off mid-joke. It was a blatant power play, one Carson handled gracefully, but it underlined the imbalance. Sinatra demanded the spotlight, often arriving with an entourage that disrupted backstage order. Carson, who valued professionalism and control, disliked the chaos. Sinatra's arrogance sometimes bled into interviews, creating tension tension despite the host's charm. Audiences loved the spectacle, but Carson quietly resented the disruption. To him, Sinatra wasn't just a guest. He was a diva who broke the Tonight Show's flow. Their chemistry produced iconic moments, yet underneath was irritation. Carson respected Sinatra's talent, but never enjoyed the circus that came with him. Stardom dazzles, but unchecked ego condemned the stage for everyone else. Number 14, Don Rickles. Don Rickles was both Johnny Carson's delight and his nightmare. As the merchant of venom, Rickles thrived on roasting anyone in sight, including Carson. Audiences loved it, but for Carson, the unpredictability could be maddening. Rickles didn't just banter, he hijacked. He'd leave his chair, tease the crew, or tear into Carson's quirks without restraint. Once, while Gust hosting, he even broke Carson's cigarette box, prompting Johnny to storm Rickles' set and mock outrage. A hilarious but visibly irritated moment. Carson admired Rickles' genius, but the chaos often left him struggling to maintain order. Where Carson preferred balance, Rickles thrived on mayhem. Their chemistry was combustible, entertaining millions, but sometimes testing Carson's patience. It was a friendship built on mutual respect, but without its friction. Chaos can't thrill audiences, but for leaders, balance is everything. Number 15, Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston embodied Hollywood gravitas, but that gravitas didn't suit the Tonight Show. Known for his iconic roles in Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, Heston carried himself with rigid seriousness, while Carson thrived on humor and spontaneity. Heston delivered long, solemn answers, often veering into politics or self-importance. The energy dragged, leaving Carson searching for levity where none existed. Heston's outspoken views, particularly on gun rights, later in his career made him even trickier. Carson generally avoided polarizing topics, yet Heston often pushed interviews in heavy directions. The mismatch was obvious. Carson wanted lively banter. Heston brought stern monologues. Always professional, Carson managed the conversations, but it was clear he found them draining. Interviews with Heston were work, not fun. Seriousness has its place, but on a stage built for laughter, it can suffocate. Number 16, Tom Snyder. Tom Snyder was a commanding broadcaster in his own right, but on Johnny Carson's stage, that was the problem. Best known for his intense late-night interviews on Tomorrow, Snyder was used to running the show. When he appeared as Carson's guest, he often slipped back into that role, dominating conversations, steering topics, and speaking at length about himself. Carson, who valued smooth pacing and witty back and forth, found Snyder's overbearing presence disruptive. Their personalities clashed too. Carson was famously reserved, controlling the show with subtlety, while Snyder thrived on bluntness and fiery energy. The result? Awkward tension. Snyder's self-promotion and habit of overshadowing Carson rubbed the host the wrong way. Some even sensed a rivalry, since Snyder's program aired right after The Tonight Show. Though Carson kept it professional, their mismatched styles left interviews strained and uncomfortable. Even skilled communicators can clash. True conversation requires knowing when to lead and when to yield.
Imagine hosting a show where even legends left you uneasy. Which Tonight Show guest do you think rattled Carson the most? An arrogant comedian, a fiery activist, or a glamorous diva? Drop your guess in the comments, because the truth behind these feuds is stranger than any scripted drama. Johnny Carson's Tonight Show reigned for 3 decades, but behind the smooth laughter were tensions, feuds, and unforgettable clashes. Bob Hope's scripted stiffness to Wayne Newton's fury. From Joan Rivers' fallout to Frank Sinatra's ego, Carson faced challenges that tested his patience and professionalism. Yet through it all, he never let the cracks fully show. That's why his legacy endures, not just for the laughs, but for his ability to handle chaos with grace. These stories remind us that even legends have limits, and that sometimes the hardest act is keeping the show rolling. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Carson's most challenging guests. If you enjoyed uncovering the drama behind late night's golden era, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. More untold stories of Hollywood legends are coming soon, and trust me, you won't want to miss the next one.